Head over to BoardGamePrices.com to see the best prices and availability for thousands of games. Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. Today we're running our own village and we're going to try to make sure we have the least amount of werewolves in it at the end of the game by using the abilities of our residents. Now don't confuse this with One Night Ultimate Werewolf or any of the werewolf games that are social deduction. This is not a social deduction game, but it is from Bezier Games. This is their big Gencon release upcoming called Silver. Now I'm going to be showing you two versions of this, Amulet and Bullet. Now they're a little bit different on how they play. The game itself is played the same, but it's how the cards react to each other, what you do with those abilities, that change the game. So you can play two really different games in the same system, and you can also mix them together. So let me show you how it's played, how all that works. I'll see you on the other side. Now I do want to mention that what you see here is not a final production version. This is a prototype, so the components, the card quality, and definitely the box quality is not the final production version. Here we have a 4-player version of the Amulet version of Silver set up. Each player is going to get 5 cards face down. This is known as their village. Now the game's played over 4 rounds, and during each round, the players are going to be trying to explore which residents are face down in their village. Now at the end of each round, players are going to flip up all the cards that are in their village and they're going to add up the amount of points on there. You want to have the least amount of points. Here we have 20 points. That's not a good score. Now how this works is each of these thematically, the more powerful they are, the higher the number, meaning the more werewolves they're attracting to their village. You're trying to have the least amount of werewolves, hence the least amount of points in your village at the end of each round. So how do you go about doing that? Well, at the beginning of each round, each player gets to view any 2 of their cards secretly. Let's say we got a 5 here. And as we just showed, we have a 3 here. So try to remember that. Now the turn structure is pretty simple in the game. You're either going to draw a card from the top of the deck or from the top of the discard pile, and different things will happen depending on where you grab from. Let's say we grab from this. This would go in your hand, but let's put it here so you can see it. Now this is the revealer. It attracts 6 werewolves. It's going to be worth 6 points. Again, trying to get the lowest amount of points. And here you can, if you see this icon, it means you can, when you draw it, immediately put it in the discard pile to use its ability. In this case, it says turn any 1 card face up. So let's do that. We don't want to put this in our village for now. Let's just put it here. Let's learn some information. So we discard it and we can trigger this ability, turn any 1 card face up. Now it said any card, which means any player's village, but let's just choose our own. Let's just flip this one up here. We go, oh wow, there's a 10 there. If that's stuck there at the end of the round, that's not going to be good because it's a lot of points. It would then go to the next player's turn. Now let's say that it came back to us, everyone else has taken a turn, and we decide to draw another card. And we have a 5 here. Now, we could, again, discard this because it has this icon and turn one of our own cards face up. But if you remember, one of the cards we saw earlier was also a 5. And if you remember, it was this one. We had a 5 and a 3 that we got to see at the beginning of the round. So instead of using this, we're going to take this card and we're going to exchange it. What we can do is we can change it with any card. Some of these I don't even know what this is. I could put it here. This would go face up and I might lose something really large, which would be good for me because you want small points. But there might be a good card under here we don't quite know yet, so you'd be really pushing your luck out here. But we know that this one's a bad card to have right now because it's a 10. So let's exchange it with this. And we're going to put this in the discard pile. So let's say it came back to us again. Now we want this card. Somebody discarded this card without knowing what it was. It's a really good card because it's only going to be worth 2 points. So instead of taking from the deck this time, we're going to take from the discard pile. We take this top card and we're going to exchange it. Now anytime you can exchange it for 1 or more cards. So I could theoretically just maybe put it here and exchange it with one of these cards. But if you know you have multiple cards of the same number, like 5 here, and we remember that we started with a 5 here, what we can do is slide these ones forward and say, I'm going to exchange this 1 card for these 2 because I know these are the same. So we'd flip them over and go, oh yes, if you have set collected properly and you have both of them that are the same, these would go in the discard pile and this card would go in one of those 2 slots you get to choose. So what does this mean? Well, it means that we just got rid of 10 points because we had 2 5s, which is great. And we gained 2. So essentially we had a net loss of 8 points, which is a pretty good move. Now some of the cards have this, which means when it's face up in your village, it has a special ability that will trigger. And this says, when face up, view one of your face down cards on your turn. So next time it comes around to my turn, if this card's here, I can trigger this and start looking at things. We go, you know what, what's this? Ooh, it's a 2. I get to look at that. So now I know I could actually try to exchange those 2 and get them out because I'd be losing 4 points. So you're trying to get down to less cards and smaller numbers. So let's say it's our next turn and we want to take this card here. We secretly look at it. We see it's a 3. Good, it's a low number. And now we want to exchange it. Now, this one is face up, which is great because every time it's my turn, I can learn more about my cards. But I want to also get rid of it because I want to get rid of points. So you have to find the right time to use the abilities and when to actually get rid of them. So I want to exchange. I know that this card let me look at this one last turn. I know these are both 2s, and so we'll flip them up. Oh, good. We get to exchange this, so these go. And I can put this card, I drew it from the deck, so it will go face down. No one can see what it is. And we go like this. Now, if we were incorrect, those cards actually stay. And if they're all incorrect, you get even more penalties. But that's how you dwindle down your cards. Now, the last possible thing you can do on your turn, so on a future turn, I could call for a vote, which essentially is saying, I think I have the lowest total. Everyone else will get one more turn. So then everyone will flip up all their cards. We'll see who has the lowest. Here I have a total of 4 werewolves that were attracted, essentially points there. Now, I was the one that called the vote. If I do have the lowest, regardless of the points here, I score 0. So if you think you have the lowest and you call and you're correct, you score 0 points. So that's the best thing to do. However, if you called the vote and you don't have the lowest, not only do you get these points, which would be 4, you add 10 to it because you were not correct calling the vote. So in this case, I'd have 14 points. Now, if you have the lowest points and you successfully called the vote and you got those 0 points, you'd get this amulet near you. And we'll talk about this in just a minute. And so once everyone has written down their points for this round, all the cards would get shuffled back up and redealt out. You play 3 more rounds like that. At the end of the 4th round, whoever has the lowest amount of points is going to win. Now, the person that has the amulet on a future round, they can, as a part of their turn, place it on one card and it stays on that card for the rest of the game. This protects this card. Whether it's face up or down, it doesn't matter. It makes it so that no one can view or move this card, including us. We can't do anything to it. Nobody else can do anything to it. It sort of protects it and it will score as normal. Now let's look at some of these other residents. Now, notice that the cards 1 through 4, their abilities all triggered if it's face up in your village. Like the Squire, when face up, you get an extra card flipped up from the deck, which gives you more choices because then you have the discard to look at, that one card, and you still have the draw deck as well. We talked about this one in the overview. This one, the Bodyguard, it protects this and one other card from opponents when it's in your village. So if it's face up, it's protected. And you protect it by putting it on a card that's in your village, and you can move it every turn. The Rascal allows you to draw extra card from the deck, and we already saw these 2 in the overview. Now let's look at some of the more powerful cards. Now all of these activate if you draw it from the deck and discard it immediately. Like you can view up to 2 of your cards, or view a card of your opponent, or view any card, or take any one card from the discard pile. Or view the top card from the deck and exchange it with one card from any village, or steal an opponent's card and give them one of your own cards, and you can look at your new card. And here are the 2 most interesting cards in the deck, 0 and 13. When face up, it's a villager. If any other 0 is face up, the round ends immediately. So you can trigger the round to end if you think you have the lowest points. A cool way to end the game there. And the Doppelganger's 13 is when you discard it, this card matches one other card. So basically it's like a wild. So really cool idea there. Now, so far we've been looking at the amulet version of Silver, but the Bullet is also launching at Gencon as well. The game plays exactly the same, but there's all different cards from Amulet in this one. So let's look at the cards in the Bullet deck. Number 1 says +1, because when it's face up, you can add 1 to the value of a card when discarded. Let's say we were exchanging these 2 cards from in front of us. It's 11 and 12. You couldn't normally do this by itself because they're different, but this +1 can make this 11 and 12, and now we can exchange them. Plus, if you have multiples of these, you can add this number to one card or split it up amongst other cards. The Priest, when face up, you get to flip one of your cards over. So either from face up to face down or face down to face up. The Goth Girl allows you to discard a card to the bottom of the draw deck instead of the discard pile to keep it from somebody else. If the Mortician's face up, when you discard a card that has that on the bottom of it, you actually get to activate it. Usually that's only activated when you draw it from the deck and then immediately discard it. This allows you to activate it when you discard it from in front of you. This allows you to flip the entire deck over, so then it goes from face down to face up. And the Instigator can flip any card over. So here's the cards 7 through 12. Remember, all these get activated when you draw it from the deck and discard immediately. The Insomniac allows you to view all your face down cards. The Thing is probably my favorite one, and this allows you to shuffle all face down cards in any player's village. So if someone knows what they have there, they're all face down, you can cause them to reshuffle so now they don't know where anything is. The marksman allows you to use that, activate the ability of one face-up card in any village. So it just helps you activate something that you normally wouldn't be able to activate. Here's to move 10 cards from the deck to the discard pile. And the count counts to 10, and if it runs out, the deck runs out, then this round ends immediately. But of course, this is, it's not mandatory. You can choose not to do it, and you can check how many cards are on the deck before you do it. The Troublemaker allows you to exchange one card from any player with one card from a different player, and the Gremlin, you turn this card face up and add it to any player's village. Now for the most powerful cards here, the Zero in the bullet deck. When it's face up at the end of the game, you get to remove one card before scoring, and then the Copycat is, this card's worth the lowest card in your village at the end. Now there is a bullet instead of an amulet. You get it the same way as the amulet. You can place it on a card in your village, and what happens here is nobody can mess with it, just like the amulet, but instead of the scoring, like it does in amulet, it does not score. So this will make sure that this 10 does not score for me. So that's the difference between the bullet and the amulet. Now the cool thing here is not only do you have two different games, because they really play differently because it's all in what the cards do between amulet and bullet, but you can mix and match. For example, here we have the amulet 10, which was take any one card from the discard pile, but we have the bullet 10 here, which is, move 10 cards from the deck to the discard pile. So if we wanted to play with the bullet version of 10, we would do that. We'd put the bullet version of 10 in the deck. We would take the 10 out from the amulet game. So you're going to have each number, you're either going to have one of the two decks, the amulet or the bullet. So you have the same amount of cards and the same amount of numbers of each of the cards, but the abilities might be changed. Like the amulet deck's 8 said view one card of an opponent, but the 8 of the bullet deck was my favorite, the thing, causing people to reshuffle. So maybe you play, mostly amulet, but then, put these ones in there. Or you can swap out as many as you want. It's totally customizable, and that's a really cool part of this whole entire system. Now to clarify the timing of these releases, Amulet is going to be the Gencon release. Bullet will be coming out at Essen, and they're already working on more sets for next year. All right, well, there is Silver. So what do I like about this? Well, when I was a kid, I used to play a card game called Golf. And you could play it with a regular deck of cards. You'd have 4 cards face down, played similar to the basics of this, where you're exchanging cards and messing yourself over sometimes and trying to have the lowest points. And it was a classic game that I played a lot as a kid. And Bezier Games actually brought back a game called Cabo, which essentially was that game with 3 cards, or I think 3 that had special abilities, which brought up just a notch, and that's being sold now in even mass market stores, and that's sort of like for the crowd that plays Uno, that would be a good thing. Now this takes that concept, that basic concept from Golf that was pushed a little bit forward with Cabo, and takes it into the gamer's realm, where there's a lot going on because of the abilities and what you can do. And so I like it when classic games, or even mechanisms from classic games, get brought into modern day, games in the gamer atmosphere. So I'm very excited to see those classic things come back, and this is a great, version of that. So, but even though it's for gamers, and even though there's a lot more going on than say Golf or even Cabo, it's still approachable to non-gamers, and I think that's cool because the basics are very easy. You're either taking a card from the deck or taking it from the discard pile, then you're either exchanging it or discarding it. I mean, that's pretty easy. It's really what the cards do is what makes the game what it is. Once the people understand that, it's pretty easy, and they don't have to learn like one card at a time. So it is approachable to new players, and I like that, even though there's a lot of depth there. I like that you're trying to set, collect, and exchange multiple cards, because you might have a couple of 10s and you're like, oh man, this is really bad. If this round ends now, I'm going to be totally hosed. But you can exchange them out and lose 20 points, and that's really cool. That set collection aspect is a fun thing to do, especially when the other players don't know what you know all the time. Sometimes they do when they're looking at your cards. Sometimes yours are face up, but they don't know what you know, and so that's a good sort of an intrigue aspect of the game. I like pressing your luck to call a vote where you think you have the lowest, and if you do, great, you'll get 0 points, but if you call the vote and you're not, then you add 10 points to your total. I like that press your luck, and having the amulet or bullet there as a reward for calling the vote and having the lowest makes people want to push their luck more than normal. I think that's cool, and I do like the sort of the abilities that those give you, where you can protect a card, and an amulet, it's scored as normal, but in bullet, it's not scored. I think that's cool. It's highly expandable, which is a huge positive for this, because as you just saw, even with just 2 of these, you really get 2 completely different experiences because of what the cards do, but then you can mix and match your favorites from the different sets, and I think that's awesome, and especially since they're already working on A few more sets for next year. I've actually played one of these already, and there's just more to come. And I think it's going to be awesome that you can get a bunch of these sets, and you can either just play them separately or mix and match all your favorite ones and kind of make the game do what you want to do. Oh, you don't want any take that cards? Then don't use the ones that have that. You like them? Add them in. Things like that. So overall, I think it's an enjoyable game that's easy to teach, easy to play, can be approachable by non-gamers, but yet has enough meat there for gamers. On the negative side of things, this game does have a memory element. You are remembering cards, you're trying to remember where they're at, and sometimes you're going to forget, and sometimes that can be frustrating. I'm not a big fan of memory elements in games, but this one is a small one. You know, you're just remembering cards, you're remembering an order and numbers essentially. But for people that really hate memory elements at all and won't play a game that has it, just know that this has that, but you might still want to give this one a try. So there it is. That is Silver. Again, it's launching at Gencon. The pre-orders are launching the day that this video does launch. It's going to be in the description of this video. There's a link for that. You can pre-order it, but there is no Gencon pickup. If you want to get it at Gencon, you've got to go there and get it. If you pre-order it and you're not going to Gen Con, that's the way to get it as fast as possible. This has been the Game Boy Geek, breaking down barriers and growing relationships through board games by helping you find the next one you'll love. The overview in this video was shot on a Watson model Game Topper. Upgrade every game you play with the ultimate gaming accessory, Game Toppers, shipping now. Check them out at GameToppersLLC.com.